Once again, welcome. Now, it's been a while that we've not uploaded videos, so I thought that today we can bounce back to our platform. Well, I did that intentionally. I wanted to wait up and see just how many new viewers we can get into our platform before we can begin to load up videos. So in this very video, I'm going to continue to do some more work on and palm wine will flow. Now, the reason is that so many of you have been asking questions about this, that you need more videos on it. So I thought that I'll put up videos on just those very salient questions that the examiner is always going to play around with. So in our very last video on palm wine will flow, we did look at it as a popular theatre. So today we are going to see how stage worthy and palm wine will flow is. We are going to see how stage worthy and palm wine will flow. So what are the merits of Bole Butake's and palm wine will flow as a stage play? You see, that question usually comes sometimes in two different forms, in which the examiner might ask you that what are the merits of the play as a stage play. They might also ask you that what challenges or what are the demerits of the play as a stage play, and what solutions can you provide to such challenges. So we are going to look at the videos, look at that question from both sides. We are going to look at its merits as well as its demerits. Should in case you see a question that is two-sided, then the rest assured you have the arguments all there for you to advance and get the marks. So we are going to continue with and palm wine will flow. My assumption is that you have read the play. So this platform, we are just reviewing questions and interpreting them, and to help guide your narrative or how your answer is expected by the examiner. Now, in question on the merits of Bole Butake's and palm wine will flow as a stage play, the examiner is likely going to be looking at 5 well argued out points from you, given that the rubrics will probably go 5 times 2 equals to 10. So the examiner will expect you to identify 5 very good arguments illustrating them richly. Of course, textual illustration is key. Now, bear in mind that the examiner is looking at how well you have interpreted the question. Secondly, the examiner is looking at your ability to illustrate your arguments richly with textual evidence. So always bear that in mind. A scantily presented essay is likely not going to get above 3. These are essays where candidates bring up points, but they lack the textual, they lack that textual illustrations to ground up their arguments, but then they just lay their points out, just hanging. The examiner is like going to give you half a mark for such points, and that is it. So in order for you to get the full marks that you deserve, after stating these arguments, the examiner expects you to provide rich textual illustrations, whether it is And Palm Wine will Flow 1984 by George Orwell, whatever text you are working with. Be rest assured that you need to put a grip over the events and be able to quote palpable evidence from the text to enrich your analysis or your arguments in order to get all the marks of the examiner. So today we are looking at the play And Palm Wine will Flow as a stage play. We are looking at its merits, the possibility of mounting it on the stage. What are those features that we see in the play that makes it easier for us to mount on stage? If we were to ask you that in your little book club or maybe in school, be a director, guide your classmates in performing And Palm Wine will Flow. What are those aspects of the play that will be easier for you to put on stage? Now let's look at them. The first one there that we can talk about is cast. Now we earlier said that cast is an extremely very important aspect of stagecraft. Without cast, there's no performance. So the cast there has to do with the sum total of all the actors and actresses involved in stage performance. And bear in mind that Bole Butake's And Palm Wine will Flow is written for stage performance. Now that explains why Shadrach A. Abanason, late Shadrach A. Abanason once said that when the play was first mounted on stage, it generated a lot of excitement because it actually presents the political realities we face in our own country today, even though it is metaphorically presented, captured in the form of a confrontation between a chief priest and the fawn in the fictional village of Iwawa. But then it metaphorically represents politics, poor governance, corrupt leadership, and those kind of things. So let us get into it. Now, for the start, the cast, the one thing that we notice about Ampam with flow is that its cast is extremely limited, or I would say it's very limited. Now, the limited nature of the cast makes it very possible for us to mount on stage. Now, why are we saying so? We are saying so because the fewer the cast, the easier it is for us to manage stage performances. Now, let's look at the back of the play. You can clearly see that the cast is not that broad. We have just a handful of characters. We have Shengon, the chief priest of Nyombom, of course, the god, and then we have Sangon. Sangon happens to be a friend of Shay who usually visits him in his shrine while he carries out libations and incantations. We also have the messenger from the palace, the messenger who runs errands from the font and whom the font dispatches to warn Shay to report to the palace while the festivities are going on for Kibanya. Then we have Kwengong. Kwengong is the eldest wife of Shay. We talk about the theme of polygamy, and the lady who wears the mask of the head goddess, and then goes back to confront the fawn and finally hands the fawn the magic potion which kills him. Then we also have Tapa. Tapa is also a friend of Shay who provides palm wine for Shay's incantations. He too is noted for switching roles. We see him as a Tapa, and then we also see him as Kibaranko. He puts on the Kibaranko mask and gets on with it. Then we also have where is one of the watchdogs, I'll say the Chindas or the errand boys of the farm. One of the men who is sent to harass the Tapa, take his palm wine, seize his palm bush from him, and have him well beaten. Then we have the farm, of course, the tyrant of a fondom of Iwawa, and then I think that is all. We may also have a voice and a messenger that we hear. So that is all for the cast. So we see that the cast is quite small and manageable. But then you observe that with such a small and manageable cast, we can easily find members to mount it on stage. It also facilitates understanding of the play, because bear in mind that a broadcast makes it challenging to understand the play, because audiences are going to get confused, and sometimes they begin to ask, who is this fellow and what does this fellow play in the play and all of that. But then with a small cast, audiences can quickly grasp who is who and what each of them wants in the play. So this tiny nature of the cast or the limited nature of the cast members, just 6-7, makes it a very, very interesting play, and makes it also possible or easier to be mounted on stage. Another aspect that we might also look at in Empire One will flow to show that it's a stage-worthy play is costume. Now, explicitly, the costume of the characters is not given, but then we can quickly use our intuition. We can be intuitive enough to see that the fawn will likely dress in his traditional regalia, and Shay is normally going to put on probably a cloth that extends from the waist right down to his ankles, which mimics that of a traditional seer. So if Shengon has to perform rituals and libations in the shrine, he's likely going to appear in that kind of outfit, maybe with a skull cap and some white chalk, smeared around his eye, indicating that he's a seer or the eye of the gods. And then talking about the women, we see Shay's wife who gets into the mask of the head goddess, and she goes out there and she performs. So Kwengong and the mask she puts on becomes her outfit, her attire. So it adds to costume. And then another aspect we might also want to look at is Kibaranko. Now Kibaranko is another man. Kibaranko is another god of the land, one of the jujus that has to display and show its magical powers and pull down the entire palace. Now we will realize that if the Tapa gets into the Kibaranko mask becomes his attire, to his outfit, which adds to costume. So we see that the costume of the characters is quite colorful, and it captures the very essence of a traditional setting, which is a rural one. That typical traditional setting, the incantations of spirits in a shrine, and the form and the Nchindas, that local color is very much generated and creates so much anxiety, so much curiosity and interest in the hearts and minds of the audiences while performance is going on. So talking about the watchdogs of Gwed, one of the watchdogs of the farm, we all know how Chindas usually dress. They wouldn't put on the kind of clothes we wear. They are likely going to put on a short brown skirt that escapes from their waist to probably their knees. They will probably be bare-chested, holding their swords or machetes to show that they are kingdoms who stand guard in front of the palace. So we see that costume is another aspect that makes it very much a stage-worthy play. Now, the third item that we might also want to discuss to show that it's a stage-worthy play is the presence of conflicts in the play. There's quite a lot of conflict in the play, and this conflict generates a lot of buzz and spectacle on stage. One of them is Shay's confrontation with the Fawn. Why the Fawn swears to have Shay bow down to his tyranny, Shay on the other hand is in the shrine, and he tells the Tapper that he will not partake in any of the Fawn's shenanigans or any of his parties where men who have done nothing for the land like Kibanya are willingly giving, are freely giving a red feather on their cap for nothing to show for it. Another aspect of confrontation I also see is the head goddess who confronts the Fawn in his palace. Now her performance and the spiritual activity she carries out in the palace is an aspect of confrontation. We might also want to look at the head goddess who presents the concoction. Of course, the concoction is water which women are produced by washing their genitals. Now, the head goddess carries this concoction, this portion rather. He carries this portion to the Fawn's palace for the Fawn to drink of it. That generates excitement because it's a conflict. It is a conflict. Another conflict we might also want to talk about is the Tapper who comes into Shay's hut with all his clothes torn, and he cries to Shay that the Fawn's watchdogs had him beaten, and all the palm wine he had tapped, which he was to bring for Shay to carry out incantations, was taken away from him by the Fawn's watchdogs, and they drank it all. His farm has also been seized by his watchdogs and returned to the Fawn. The Fawn has claimed all of it. Now we observe that it also generates a lot of conflict. Now Sargon is Shay's friend, and the Tapper informs Shay that Sargon has been arrested by the watchdogs of the Fawn, taken to the palace and beaten. But then Sargon wouldn't even shed tears or even cry out. So it tells us that Sargon stands his ground and is able to face up to the Fawn and his tyranny. And these conflicts that we generate within the play also brings a lot of enthusiasm and interest, thereby proving that it's an interesting play which is very much worthy of our stage. Now, another aspect we might also want to look at is role switching. Now, when we talk about role switching then becomes a motif used by especially two characters. We are talking about Quengong, Shay's eldest wife, and the Tapper. Now, when we encounter them for the very first time, they are just ordinary villagers. But then when Shay tells them, commands Quengong to get into the head goddess's mask, after a while she is no longer herself again. She transforms into a goddess who commands a lot of spiritual powers. She is able to carry the message from the twin rivers where the women have gathered to produce the magic potion by washing off their genitals. Now she is to carry that earthenware pot full of that magic potion to the Fawn's palace, where she demands that the Fawn drinks of it. So what then are we saying? We say that she's switching roles. It's more like disguise. So the switching of roles creates a lot of buzz again. It is more of a spectacle, and a lot of excitement is generated as performance goes on. She's not the only one who switches role. Another character who switch role is Quengong. Rather, is the Tapper. When the Tapper equally gets into the mask of Kibaranko, he's no longer himself again. All the destruction and the scattering of the palace tells us that some magical powers are involved. Because we don't know that by virtue of our African tradition, it will require a lot of initiation and some spiritual powers for you to carry out such destruction on that massive scale. For him to be able to accomplish that feat, it tells us that he switches role from a human to a god with spiritual powers in him. So switching of roles is another aspect that makes it a stage-worthy play. Now, we would also want to talk about lightning as well as earthquake and the sound. Now, lightning, sounds, earthquake it makes even for a more intriguing play. Now, when our play begins, we realize that lightning is needed to be able to switch from morning to evening. When the earth goddess also wakes up, we hear the thunder striking and places are shaking. There's a lot of tremor and trembling. Now, all these activities, it will be difficult to mount on stage, but the possibility of them happening or their existence in the play only makes it heightens suspense and tension. Now remember that suspense is that element that drives the interest of the readers right to the close of a story. Without suspense, the story becomes boring. So, lightning, sound, suspense itself, they are all aspects that renders the play a stage-worthy play. Now the last item that I might also want to talk about, which justifies it as worthy of our stage, is setting. There's quite a lot of varieties at the level of setting. There's a lot of it. Now we have minor settings. Of course, the play takes place in the village, the fictional village of Iwawa. But when we look deep inside, we see that there are minor settings like Shea's shrine. That's a typical shrine of an African seer. There is a skull, there's a mask of the head goddess Kibaranko, She himself, all the incantations, the shredding of kola nuts, palm wine, libations, incantations, the spiritual songs incantated to Nyombom. All of this generates that sacred, that mystic energy that shrouds the shrine or the play, showing us that it's a traditional play. The gods are very much present. So that setting, his shrine, is very, very impacting to the overall achievement of the themes Bole Butake sets out to achieve. Another setting that is worthy of mention is a twin river where the women congregate to discuss how to deal with the oppressive form. What have these women all done? They are elderly women. They have gathered to do something about it. And they get water and they wash their genitals. And this water is handed over to Kwengo, who now plays the head goddess. She should present it to the fawn. Now that river where that ritual takes place, it is also a minor setting, because without it the women would not have produced that magic potion, and without it the fawn wouldn't have died, and so its tyranny would have continued. So that setting too generates a lot of intrigue, as well as it sustains the plot of the novel, of the play. Now, another setting that we can't let go is the False Palace itself. Now, the False Palace reeks of drunkenness and palm wine. It is there that all the parties are going on. A lot of drinking is going on. Titles are conferred to individuals who are least deserving. One of them is Kibania, just because he could bribe the fawn with a few livestock and chicken and all of that, and the fawn has to give him a title. He has done nothing for the tribe. And She even laments this when she tells us that sometimes in the past, the red feather was not a title given by the fawn. It was recommended by its council of elders to anyone who has done enough to the village to deserve it. But then that times have changed. The fawn will willingly grant a red feather to anyone who can pay for it. So She doesn't see any reason why it should be part and parcel of such lavish parties at the False Palace. That is why he boycotts it and stands his ground. In spite of the numerous threats from the voice, the messenger, and his friends, She stands his ground. Even when his wife's farms have been taken, he tells them to back off, that the gods will fight their own battle. He dares Kibania to step his feet into his wife's farms, because he knows that the wrath of the gods will hit them. And so the gods have, of course, stepped into She's favor when they pronounce a drought that will hit the land. It means that the gods themselves are not happy with the status quo. Now, another setting that we might also want to mention there is the adjoining road leading to the False Palace, as well as to She's hut. Where we see Kibaranko, demonstrating, as well as the head goddess, as they are shaking up places and they are moving through their path. People can find places trembling, and there's a lot of intrigue again. So we see that the use of these minor settings brings variety, refreshes up the play, and generates more interest in the audience. And so when we sum up all of these items that we have discussed, we can clearly see that Bole Butakes and Pan One Will Flow is a stage-worthy play. Now, having discussed the stage-worthiness of the play, it's only normal that we look at the challenges that we may face in the course of mounting this play on stage, and what solutions can we intuitively provide. So bear in mind that if the examiner attempts a question like that, he may likely put it in two sides, where you have to provide arguments to show that it's a stage-worthy play, and to what extent, what challenges are we going to face should we mount it on stage. So that will come in our next video. We are going to look at the challenges of Bole Butakes and Pan One Will Flow as a stage play, the challenges, the difficulties that one is likely going to face in mounting up a stage. Now, you will do us a huge favor by hitting the subscribe button, hitting the like over there, as well as to, spread the video around and to share so that more questions, more demands for the students, of course, get more videos for our platform. So, see you in the next video.